Good morning. Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Good morning. There seems to have been some strange change in the way Zoom behaves over the last few days.
Yeah, I think there was a waiting
So
room.
I know, but we usually don't have that issue in this class. So I'm a little surprised. It's going to make life a little difficult because people will keep on arriving while I'm trying to teach. So give me a minute to try to figure out what this is. I'm
Yeah.
admitting people manually, and it's not letting me turn off the feature, which it usually does. All right. Good morning, everyone who's arriving. I'm having a strange waiting room problem today, so give me a minute or two to fix it. Bit of a nuisance. Good morning, everyone. We're not all here yet because Zoom has mysteriously turned on my waiting room feature and is not letting me turn it off, which basically means I have to stand by the door, the virtual door, and let people in one at a time. So it's always something. All right, let's see. Nobody's waiting right now. There's only 20 people here. Leah, I hear you about the camera. I understand then. You could leave your camera off in that case. Um, Folks, give me a minute more while I try to solve this so I don't have to continue doing this for the rest of the morning. Yep, there's more coming. You don't have to tell you, I kind of like Zoom. I'm making friends with it, and I've been Zooming now for 7 months. But because it got so popular, it's constantly trying to upgrade. It's security mostly. People were Zoom bombing. I'm sure you heard about that. Just sort of like showing up in Zoom meetings and doing disturbing things. I'm not really too worried about that, but they have they're they seem to keep changing their security. Demanding waiting room and then not, or IDs or passwords and then not. It complicates the matter. As of last week, I was able to turn off the waiting room, and now it's not letting me do that. So in plain English, guys, that basically means anyone comes just a couple minutes late, I am stuck delaying the class so that someone's not locked out, so I could keep watching to make sure everyone's here. Absolutely maddening. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got only about 19 people in the room now. We've got well over 20 enrolled. All right. So folks, listen, I'm going to ask you to be a little patient with me today because I have to keep on checking the waiting room. It's like a guest that has to keep saying, a host, I should say, that keeps having to say, excuse me, someone else is at the door. So please be patient while I figure out what has changed in the last few days that I missed. All right, I'm not seeing anybody in the waiting room right now. I've got this little window I get to look at. So let me tell you what's what. Today is to my mind, particularly cool for people who like to draw or people who just like Adobe Illustrator because we're moving forward. Hang on 1 second here. All these bags. We're moving forward. We began the pen tool, and that, as I've said before, is considered an urgent tool in this program. I want to take that further. So give me a minute just to say a couple things about that. I want to be really honest with you. I was doing professional Illustrator very early in my career without the pen tool. So I'd kind of proved to myself how much can be done without that particular tool. I was doing a lot of greeting cards in those days. Really fun job. Um, so I was using a lot of pencil tool and all the other features, ways to draw the outer lines, the path, as we like to call it. It is the one you need for industrial perfection. And I've created that phrase, industrial perfection, because I don't like saying perfection. What does perfection mean? I happen to love Jackson Pollock, who was a splash painter, the king of all splash painters. Um, a master painter, in fact, but the guy was not really motivated by line. So I don't think he would have agreed with someone talking about the perfect, an idea of perfection in art. But for industrial perfection, absolutely. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you're drawing icons for the future Macintosh, they're changing the little folder, they're changing all the arrows, the little fingers that point at things, all the different icons that you see on your desktop, or maybe you're doing it for Windows. They have to have perfect curves and clean lines. There should be nothing expressionistic or emotional about that stuff. Or let's say you're going into products and you're the one who's drawing the manuals for a product or a textbook. And these things are the kinds of places where extreme neatness, the kind of stuff one used to use drafting tools to draw, um, becomes required. And the pen tool is the master. I want to say something to everybody here. Oh, one more person in the waiting room. Um, you have plenty of time to figure out who you are as an artist. And I'm going to ask you, person to person, human to human, don't rush self identity. When you try to convince yourself you're a certain kind of person, you're in the midst of a grave lie. You cannot pick out of a hat what kind of artist you are, what kind of person you are. And, identity is a massive, massive issue in the 20s. A lot of you guys are in your 20s. Also in 2020, I should add, because, we're opening up a lot of doors when it comes to identity these days, right? A lot of old cliches are not as stringent as they used to be. Do you have to be straight or not straight or whatever? And, what is your name? Religion, art, blah, blah. But listen, I'm not really here to talk about everything in life. I use art as my main medium for discussion. So I just want to say, as an artist, I've seen young artists fake a style. And I don't mean stealing anything, by the way. I'm talking about, honestly, oh, I like this guy's colors or this woman's colors, and I like this kind of thing this other artist does. I'm going to borrow a little of this, and I'm going to call it me. That's not the way it works. And I think most of you already know this, right? You draw, something's not right, it's in your gut, you react, and that's you. That's the real you. And after years of this constant reaction, you start to developing this handwriting that you can't avoid. This handwriting, and you discover that other people might just love it because it's honest, and that's the thing we react to most in art. It's realness, and you can't be real without just scratching itches to discover who you actually are. So I just want to say, I'm going to teach all kinds of tools because I'm trying to create a span of what someone might do in Illustrator and what the prevailing tools are. But as time goes by, you're going to find others that you prefer and some that you want to drop. But I'm going to ask you not to do that early. Don't say, oh, this one's too much of a drag, I'm just not going to use it. The pen tool especially would be a great mistake. So some of you are going to love it, and you don't even need this speech. Others aren't, because you're going to feel it's a little restrictive, it's a little uptight. Be patient, be the wise person who opens every door before you close them. And if someone's older than you, who cares? And I do care deeply. Because I believe in the role of artists in the world, and here you are, the next generation, right? So let me open those doors with you, and wait and wait and wait until you think, not to this one, close it. That should be wait for. Anyway, let me back up. So yeah, more pen tool, more exercises, and a little bit of drawing. Finally, with the pen tool. I want to get to blends. A few of you guys miraculously figured out how to make your own blends. We call it gradients. The world's not made of flat colors. In fact, when you walk through the world, you don't actually see a single flat color. I mean, if you painted your wall yellow, because of the way light works, the yellow's not the same anywhere on that wall. And if you got a good eye, you could easily see, oh, this is closer to the light source, so it looks different. Down here, it's further from the light source, so it's perhaps darker, and that's gradients. That's the world of blends. So it's not just rainbows, but it does include that too. So it's the other thing that I want to do. And there's a few other things too. So it's a big day. I better get started. I'm checking my waiting room. Oops, hang on a second there. I want to wait for a minute. So, guys, I need to say something to all of you, right? I know the internet is funky, right? It's not a perfect science. So sometimes you come to get to class and something doesn't work. I also know computers are not a perfect science. But I have to tell you, though, that if you're late because you're just late, that isn't acceptable. You know, to be honest with you, the fields most of you are going in are very competitive. And the first way to lose a job or to lose an opportunity is to come late. If it's the internet, don't worry about it. You have to do what you got to do. It's like the subway, you know, you're going to be late sometimes, right? But I'm saying if you're habitually late, um, you better do something about it. Frankly, myself, I'm a very kind person, but when I have people working under me and I'm art directing, it infuriates me when people are late. We're all on the same team and that person's slowing down the team. I fire somebody just after a couple of times, I'd be like, very sorry, but when you like, you know, mature in that way, talk to me again. So again, if you were late today for no fault of yours, I'm not, I'm just saying, if you're late because, you know, you couldn't get out of bed or whatever, you better go to bed earlier next time. One reason I'm a little frustrated is, for those of you who were late, is Zoom keeps changing the way that it works. And the way I had it rigged up, you guys could come, just join the room. And now it switched things up all of a sudden that you have to go to a waiting room. Wouldn't let me turn that off. So that means I have to keep looking instead of teaching. Oh, did anyone else come late? So about half the class can, and actually one person was actually on time. One person. You know, have you ever had a teacher that locked the door like 1 minute after the class starts? You have? I just had one of those. And you have to say, I don't advocate that, but I get it. They're trying to train people to not fail early. So I'm going to stop, right? I want your solemn oath, everybody in here, you're going to be on time next class. Can't have an entire class be late, right? I'm going to start teaching the best stuff right on time then. All right. Listen, I see I'm getting a bunch of chats too. Let me just say a couple things about the chats. You know, in my class, the chats are best to support each other. Someone mentioned a cool tool and they want to know where to get it. You could chat so people could see it. Someone's having a tech issue that I don't know the solution. Maybe you do. You could chat. You could also chat me, but be very clear though, your teacher's hyper-focused for you, really for you. So I can't keep looking at waiting rooms or the chat. So it's always best to talk to me by turning on your mic. You could wave at me, get my attention, you know, and turn on your mic. I'm very open to you interrupting with your voice. And if you must chat, chat, but please be aware, I might not even notice it for another 15 minutes. Hey, you all know how to focus or you wouldn't be artists. So maybe you can understand what I'm saying. I have a deep agenda, so I can't keep looking at the door and chat. All right, but I will right now, just to be fair, yes, if you need to use an iPad to Zoom with me, that's acceptable most of the time. I want to tell you the only reason why some people actually Zoom on 2 devices. I've seen people's names twice. They got some kind of cool game going, and I really don't mind that. But the only time I do mind is when you need tech support and I have to look on your screen, right? Then you have to be Zooming on the same computer you're running Illustrator with, right? You see that, right? So I don't know if you've done that yet, where you had to screen share in one of your classes. So it's going to happen often through the rest of the semester. And if you're doing it on a different device, you can't screen share with me. So here's the rules about that. If you need to use a different device, your phone one day, an iPad one day, yes, that's acceptable. But it's not ideal. You won't lose points in my class, but you won't be able to show me anything if something goes wrong. So for today, the one person who asked me, you go right ahead, Gabriella, but just in the future, keep in mind, it's probably not ideal. You know what I mean? If we could do it on the same computer. Hey, does anybody have, look folks, I just want to say something. I'm on your side, everybody's side. Sorry if I seem a little cranky this morning, I'm fine. I'm on your side completely. Does anybody have a question for me?
I just want to say sorry that it may have come across that I was late. My device for some reason, none of the audio is working, so I had to join on a different one.
Thanks for telling me. And I'm going to assume everybody else was late, had the same thing today. It's a little hard to believe that 20 people would be late on the same day, but anything's possible. Look, I'm friendly and I make people laugh sometimes. So sometimes it thinks, oh, Ira's cool, I can come late. Ira's not that cool. Cool in some ways, but I'm determined to help you succeed in every way possible. That means learning to be on time because the art world's crazy competitive. That's one side that's a little harsh. Serious about tools because I want you to be free. I want your imagination to be let out of the bag. So first you have to be here. Second, you got to learn the tools. And lastly, just art life stuff. You know, conceptual, emotional, spiritual, all the stuff that it takes to really dig deep and make great art regardless of the field you're going in. Let's get started. I'm going to screen share. Oh my God, another person in the waiting room. Oh, she's rejoining. That's different. Okay. All right. Let's get busy. All right, I'm going to share my screen. See, sometimes you're going to have to do this. That's one of the reasons why I'd like everybody on the same computer that they have Illustrator on. But here we go. Let me get to today's handout. So I want to point out something different today, and I hope it didn't confuse anybody when you were looking at the home page. So yeah, your section 103, they're easy enough to find, but you see there's this new thing that says Class 5 assets. Now, I don't mind if you load that while I'm talking to you. That might be a good idea. So if you switch back to the home page, you'll see right beneath the class, it says Class 5 assets. I want to tell you what that is. Sometimes in this class, I have to give you parts to work with. We may mix photos with our illustrations, and I may supply them, for example. Or I want to imitate what would happen if you scanned or photographed one of your sketches and you wanted to do a finished version in Illustrator. And I want to get that subject today off the ground. And so I supplied an image that we're going to need a little later. But if you want to load it early, that's cool. So right underneath Class 5, October 1st, you see Class 5 assets. It says C-shape. So I'm going to click it just to make my point. So, you know, it's probably a good idea for you to join me on this, unless you already did it somehow. So I'm going to click Class 5 Assets. Now, I'm in Chrome right now, so in a moment, a little arrow just pointed down to the left. And at the bottom of my browser, can you guys see the bottom of my browser? I'm kind of circling my cursor around it.
Yeah, we
It
can
says
see it.
there, CD124, Class 5, blah, blah, .zip. Now, I'm imagining some of you guys saw a zip file before and some have not, so I just want to say something quickly about that. Zip files are called compressed files, and I'm going to talk about compression for a moment, compressed files. On a Macintosh, the most popular kind of compressed file is a zip, and it ends, indeed, in .zip. You see it on Windows, too. On Windows, sometimes you see .rar, RAR, I guess. I don't use Windows much, but they're also compressed. So what is it, and why do people use it? Well, sometimes when you email somebody something, you need to email them 10 things, right? And you don't want to separately attach 10 objects. Or sometimes you need to send 10 objects, but they must be contained in a folder. Hang on a second. I slow down whenever it tells me the internet is funky. Sometimes, let's say you're a web designer, those separate pages don't work unless they're in a folder. Hey, have any of you guys taken web design with me? Some of you look real familiar. No? I guess some of you will, probably next semester. So when you need to send someone a website to check out before it goes online, it has to be in a folder. So here's the deal with that, though. The only way to send a folder is to compress it. It behaves as a unit, one solid unit. You send it to that person, and they can uncompress it or unzip it, right? So how many of you guys just downloaded my zip? Can you just wave at me? Great. So that's everybody. Leah's camera's not working today. Alik, I think your camera is working, so can you turn it on? Remember, it's required in my class.
It's actually not working. I'm trying to connect it.
I need to look at my student.
I actually don't see
okay.
the assets that you were talking about.
All right, have a look with me one more time. So if you go back to my home page,
Mm-hmm.
right, you go to the menu, right? I imagine this is how you got to class today, right? You opened up the handout?
Yes.
So right
But-
beneath,
That's not showing up in my screen.
Okay, so could you refresh your browser?
Sure.
Then go back to that little menu.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Actually, thank you so much for asking, right? Because I always wonder, uh, because sometimes you have to refresh the browser. I upload I make changes 5 minutes before class sometimes. So that means if you opened up the page early, you don't see my last changes, So thanks for bringing that up. All right, I just want to say something. Guys, listen, Illustrator works just as good on Mac or Windows. Really, in my experience, it's virtually the same. But I just want to know, how many guys are on Macs? Can you do this for me? Let me know. So that's most of the class. So the few of you who are on Windows, you have to let me know if something is not working just right for you, okay? You have to let me know. So first, let me say something about Macs. When you download a zip on Mac, what you're gonna do the rest of your career, it's very common, all right? The fastest way to get to it is not to go find your downloads folder. You guys watch this. If I come down here where the zip just loaded, if I click this little arrow, it's going to give me questions like show it to me in the folder. I don't want that. If I click right on the name of the zip, look what it does. It does two things. It took me to downloads automatically, and it unzipped it. So this is the only thing that's in there, this thing that's called, let me open this up, C-shapes exercise.png. This is what it looks like. We're going to talk about this later, right? So this zip, I don't need anymore. This is what we needed. Now, if you're on Windows, since I'm not an expert on Windows, I'm going to ask you to find your own downloads folder. But I do want to say one thing, especially to Windows people, right? So if you never use Windows, you could ignore me for a minute, right? But if you use Windows a lot, please pay attention. Zips on Windows only. This is odd, right? So just bear with me for a minute. On Windows only, you could use anything inside of a zip without unzipping it. Okay, that sounds very convenient, except it doesn't always work. So I'm a multimedia guy, and I use media from all different kinds. So I keep bumping into situations where using a file in an unzipped zip doesn't work, but I know how to make it work. So if you're on Windows right now, I'd like you to take my advice. You would control click the zip, and you're going to see something like extract, or even better, extract all. Extraction is the same as unzipping. So I'm going to ask you not to allow it to use files in the zip until you've extracted it. This is on faith. It just works better. So if you're on Windows, you want to right-click yours, you'll get the little menu, and you should extract it. You know, I got to get to the good stuff, right? Really, I do. But there's some nerdy stuff that we all need to get used to because of technology. So I just want to add one more little thing. When you get that image out, in other words, you've unzipped, today there's only one thing in it, and it's a PNG kind of image file. It's up to you where you put it, but I do want to give you a little bit of advice. Professionals never work on anything inside of downloads, right? They always put it somewhere that makes more sense to them. Some people just put stuff loose on the desktop, and they clean the desktop up later. Some people have specific folders prepared in advance. Oh, this project, I put all the parts in this one folder. That's a professional way of looking at it. But the Dropbox is just a mailbox. So no one works in there. You take your mail out of the mailbox and then you read it. So this is what I'd like to say. I don't really have time to go into file management. You can leave it in downloads if you want. Otherwise, I'd like you to put it somewhere where you can get it later today. This is what I'm going to do. I got instant access to my desktop here on the left. So I'm just going to drag the PNG, that's the one we want, to the desktop. Right now I can ignore downloads and just go to the desktop, which is where I keep a lot of my most recent stuff. And I just have to find it. It's called C-shapes, this one. So it's there for later today. I just wanted to get that out of the way. I know that you're all prepared. All right.
How do you compress a folder when you're sending?
When you're sending something, take a look at this since you ask. We don't have a lot of time, but I can answer that one. You click on a folder. You right-click if you're on Windows. You control-click if you're on a Mac. And you choose compress. Watch what happens. Give it a minute. There's my zip. And this is what I could email to someone or put in a shared Dropbox, a pickup box, that kind of thing. and they'll just unzip it on their end. It's a good question.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, let me get to back to the handout. Hey, please guys, don't be shy. I'm very friendly. I'm a little friendlier when you're on time, but I'm always friendly. Anybody have any questions about the zips? And you might have more later in the semester when we use them more. No, it's very techy, but convenient. Okay, let me get back here. All right. If I haven't already, I'm going to be I think I did actually already make it. There's a revisions folder inside of my, inside of our Google Drive that you used last week. There's a revisions folder in there. You might have to go to the last week's handout if you don't remember how to get into the Google Drive. But if you have any revisions for project 1, here's the only rule. Give me it with the original name. Oh man, I made a mistake. This is the second time I did it this semester. Not .pdf. I'm gonna have to fix that right on our break, I think. It's .ai. But the only important part is use the original name if you have an update for me. Just add v2. That just means version 2, right? Take that file, put it in my revisions folder. And if it is indeed superior, I'll raise your grade. The grades have not gone in yet. But if you don't feel so good about the last one, or you just had a brainstorm, because you did it on time, you've earned the right to give me a revision whenever you want. So if you're inspired, you put it in there, I'll find it, you know, and at some point, if I already graded you, I'll just go back and regrade it. Does that make sense? So if you need it, yeah, it's inside last week's folder. So you might have to go to the class 4 handout to get in the Google Drive. Then you'll see revisions. Just open it or just drop your file right on revisions. And if you have questions, you could always send me an email if it doesn't work for whatever reason. All right. I want to get to something cool. So let's all open Illustrator. I'm dying to make art with you guys. Not that, though we're going to do that later. All right. So I'm an Illustrator. I think some of you probably launched it already. And if not, launch it now. And I always use the file menu to create a new file, even though it's exactly the same as this. A lot of people turn this page off. So I'm just going to do File Menu New. And I want you to join me in something. You notice on the right here, I already set this up to 14 inches. So you just want to make sure that this says inches, 14 inches wide. With 8.5 inches tall. So this is what's called a landscape document, meaning it's horizontal. So I would like it to be 14 inches wide by 8.5 tall. So you did File Menu New, and then just click Create. All right, you're gonna love this, right? I'm gonna ask everyone to pay extra close attention today. Gradients are, like I said, some of you figured out how to use them. Those people I'm gonna help master it. Those of you who've never tried it, you're gonna love it. So join me right away. First, can you get your rectangle tool out and just draw yourself a big rectangle? Now next, I'm gonna need 3 different palettes out. You know, for the record, I wanna show you something. This is called a dialog box because it has a close button. It can't stay out. These are called palettes because they can stay out. So the palettes that I need are swatches. So if yours are not out, can you go to the window menu and open swatches? Now I want to warn you about that. If yours landed here, I'd like you to press on the name, drag it out, right? Because we're going to be, I don't want it snapping and hiding itself. The next thing I want from the window menu is color. So the first was swatches. Now we want color. So we've been using this lately, okay? And last is the new tool called gradients. Luckily, they're all in the same place, so that's kind of cool. Right? So I want to go back to the window menu and get gradient. Not gradient styles, just gradient. Now, folks, listen, I went over this before, and this thing's sort of an option. It's not really required, but I'm because I use this a lot. So if you don't remember docking, I can't blame you. You might want to try it quickly with me now. Swatches I'm going to leave on top. So I'm going to take color. So you could always drag these around by the name, by the tab, right? You could drag them out if they're grouped in the wrong way. But I'm going to take mine and I'm going to drag it up to the bottom here, And when I see that thick blue line, I let go. This way, I can move them as a unit. I'm going to do the same thing with gradients. I'm going to drag it up to the bottom of here until I see that thick blue line and I let go. By the way, if yours shows up here on this little bar with the icons, you just have to get to know what the icons are. You know, I don't use them that much, to be honest with you, right? It's a cool little shortcut bar, you know? I'm not a big fan, but I think it's kind of cool. I want to just mention one more thing. If you're on a very small screen and this huge dock starts to bother you, click the name, double click any of these names to fold them up, right? They're still docked. I could move it around as a unit, and I could double click any of them to open it up. So I want to get that wide open, so. All right. You guys ready? What I'd like for everybody to do is fill that box with any flat color. I want to make a quick couple points. We've been focusing on these, right? And I was talking to you earlier the last few weeks about how to use these to adjust those colors. So I actually did that twice, right? And we're going to need that information today. But today we're going to start something completely different, right? So could everybody join me by looking at your toolbar? You're looking for this tool here. It's called the gradient tool. You could just press G on the keyboard to get to that tool. Now, once you get the gradient tool, I want you to just click right inside that big rectangle you just made. Now, you should be seeing a gradient. Now, what I'm kind of curious is, and I'm going to need you to help me out with this, how many of you guys are seeing a white to black gradient? Can you guys just wave at me? So most of you, right? So I just got to say something about it. The way that it works, you got a different color, Miles?
No, it's just giving me like a circle with a line through it. Like it's not gonna work for some reason.
Bring your fill box to the front. Look at the bottom of the toolbar. You know it does fill and stroke.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure the fill box is in front and then try it again.
I'm still not working.
All right, hey, give me 1 second, guy. I just want to show everybody something. I'm at the bottom here, and if I have the stroke box in front and I tried the same thing, here's the stroke box.
I got it. I just got it, but by clicking on the gradient on the right, like on the right,
here?
the palette, yeah.
All right, we'll have to keep our eyes open for that, Miles. And if there's more problem later on, we'll screen share.
Okay.
You'll screen share, all right? Anybody else need a hand? Because I'm about to get very busy with this. So I want to say something that's weird about this tool, though. If any of you have been exploring gradients on your own, very often that trick of clicking on a fill might give you the last gradient you used. So I want to give you an example of that. Could you all make sure that your rectangle is still selected? So you might have to go back to the black arrow if it isn't. Then I want you to make sure that your fill box is in front at the bottom of the toolbar down here. I always use the letter X on my keyboard to switch those. But you could just, you know, click it, right? I'm going to make sure mine is selected. There we go. I'd like you to look on the Swatches palette and notice there's a few gradients that are already there, right? So here is this yellow to orange one. Here's a blue to transparent one. So we would be able to tell that's transparent if there was something behind it, right? What I'd like for everybody to do right now is make sure, if you didn't get the same gradient, to please click the black and white one. You're going to learn to make your own today. All right. The next few steps are all about the gradient tool. So with the gradient tool, I'd like for everybody to ignore this bar. Please ignore it. Don't even touch it. I'd like you to come to the top of your box and press and drag down. Now, what's interesting about that, when you click, you set the first color, which is white. You dragged, and where you let go, set the second color. Let's try it a different way. So ignore that bar this time. I want you to go to the left edge of your box and drag all the way to the right.
Professor?
Yes.
I don't have the option to do that. Like
Did you
the
click
white
the gradient?
line. Yeah, I
The
did.
gradient tool?
Yeah.
And your object is selected.
Oh, the two. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, I got it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Look at it. It's weird because we're juggling tools and they're all new. So the one thing that really flips people out most is how often you have to switch to the black arrow. To be honest though, if you guys remember from last week, the command key gets you the last arrow tool that you used. So frankly, I don't have to keep switching tools. You know, I'm in the gradient tool now, but if I wanted the arrow tools, I just hold down command or control if I was on Windows, and I could drag it around. As soon as I let go of the command key or the control key, I'm back to the gradient tool. All right, guys, let's do that one more time. Can you press from top to bottom? The main point is where you begin starts the first color, where you let go is the last. Then I'd like you to do the sideways one, the horizontal one more time. But what if you wanted the white in the top left corner and the black in the bottom right corner? In other words, what if you wanted a diagonal like that, right? Diagonal. Well, just press in the corner where you want color number 1 and drag over to the other corner. This is the perfect time to tell me if anything's not working. I just got some good questions. Is this behaving?
I mean, I don't really have that line that you can like drag. Not showing. Like if I select the selection tool, it just disappears and I can't do what you.
That's right, because you have to go back to the gradient tool. So if you get the selection tool, you click the object so Illustrator knows what you're working on. And then you have to go back to the gradient tool. That's the only tool that could move the gradient around. Is it working now? Anna?
Yeah.
It is. Great. So guys, listen, I want to point out that even those of you who got it the first time, I promise you that same problem is going to happen to you over and over in this program. It will never behave until you select an object and then get the correct tool. You know, that's the order it is.
I think there's
Okay.
someone in the waiting room.
right.
They just sent us an email.
Hold on. Oh my God. Thank you for telling me. You're so helpful. Give me a minute. A second. Tell her I'm coming. This is, I don't really know what happened with Zoom in the last couple of days that was different than last week. There we go. Levi, listen, folks, everybody, Zoom keeps changing. I'm really going to need everyone to be on time next week. Don't even be a minute late, right? Seriously. And if you're having internet problems at home, come early. You know, I'll check the waiting room in the first 5 minutes, and then I'm going to stop because I just can't stop the class. You know, again, it was very smart to email a student in here, Levi, and almost everyone was late today. I disabled the waiting room feature and it magically will not turn off today. All right, so I'm going to go back to what I'm doing. You're going to have to jump in and do your best to catch up with me right now. So first off, I'm going to ask for everybody to delete that object on stage. Just delete it. Levi, you're going to need your swatches out, your color out, and the gradient palette out. You're going to have to do this on your own. All three are from the window menu. Swatches, color, and gradient. All right, could everybody draw a rectangle? Now, I'd like you to again, make sure your fill box is in front and fill it with a flat color. So what I'm trying to say is, what happens when you change your mind, right? You know, you're checking out flat colors and then you're like, you know, it's not what I even want, right? Well, a great way to get started is to go to the toolbar and get the gradient tool. You know, you could press the letter G to find it, but you'll recognize it quickly enough. And then you simply click right on the object. I had to click twice, just strange. Now we're ignoring this bar, right? We're going to use this later, but I really want you to learn how to work without it. Once you've got a gradient in there, the whole idea that we're focusing on now is moving it around. One reason I wanted you to have the gradient palette out is so that you could see that it's made of two colors. We've got white on the left and black on the right. So when you press and drag, you're telling it which direction to go, where the first color should go. I want you guys to do an experiment with me. What I want you to do this time is I want you to start on the top edge, drag down, but only go halfway. It's interesting, isn't it? So if you look at that, this bar is telling you that this is actually the only blended area, right? Black starts here, but since I dragged halfway, the last color finishes off the fill. What would happen if you started outside the object? Try this with me. Start above your object and drag past it. Now, I think most of you probably have a very good eye. That is a gradient. It's just a very subtle one. I left the white out. The white is way up here, outside of the box. I left the black out too. It would be way down here. So this is just the middle part of the gradient. So what I'd like for you to do for a couple minutes is simply press and drag, experiment a little, see what you can discover on your own just by pressing and dragging, and then we're going to upgrade this whole thing. Levi, while they're experimenting over there, did you find the gradient tool on the toolbar? You could press G. All right, good. So we're working with gradient fills. You typically start with an object with a fill and you click it and you get the blends. You're all right? I want to make our own gradient, all right? This is where it gets incredibly cool. I want the same palettes out we were talking about. We're focusing on the same tool, right? Now I got to tell you something really weird about Illustrator. There is no button, new gradient button. There really ought to be. But the way, and it's funny, I've looked it up in every version that comes out, right? Just to see what changes, right? Typically what people do is they start with an existing gradient and they modify it and they get it to a point where it's brand new if they need to. I want to show you something kind of interesting. Could you all switch, go to your Swatches palette, make sure your object is selected first, make sure your fill box is in front, and choose this particular fill. So this is a sort of orangey to yellow kind of fill color. And if you look at the gradient palette itself, you could see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors in it. You can see the same thing on this gradient bar that showed up. Now, what I'd like you to do with me for a minute is come to the gradient palette instead, because I don't think these 3 colors in the middle are necessary. So what I'd like you to do is take one of them, one of the 3 that's in the middle. The one on the left, leave. The one on the right, leave. It's just the 3 in the middle. Press on it and drag down to pluck it off the bar. Take the next one, pluck it off the bar. Take the next one, pluck it off the bar. Now, there's a couple things you needed to do to be able to do that, right? You needed the gradient palette out, and we got that from the window menu, right? We needed the object to be selected naturally, and we needed the fill box to be in front because that's the way Illustrator thinks. If the stroke box is in front, you could just do stroke things, outline things, right? Did plucking them off the bar work? So if you notice, the gradient is very similar. The colors in the middle were not really necessary at all. They were just different shades of orange, to tell you the truth. If you wanted to change the gradient now, go back and get the gradient tool. And you know about pressing and dragging. So you could redistribute it however you want. Right, that's the whole gradient because I went from wall to wall. Here's me going, keeping the beginning, but sort of leaving out the end because I'm dragging past the object. So look at the freedom. This looks just like what I had before with less colors. All right, so we realize you can get gradients right out of the can. And at some point, I'm going to show you where Illustrator hides a whole library of gradients. But what I'd rather do is have you make your own. So let's change these colors, right? So this is how you change a color. I'd like you to go back to the gradient palette and double click that first color. Double click it. Now this is interesting. When you double click one of these are called color stops, by the way. When you double click color stop, it typically opens up a version of the color palette itself. Right? It looks just like this palette. So you could change that color either by clicking down here, which we've done before, Watch the gradient change live. It's pretty great. You could use the sliders, especially if you're, you know, really good at mixing your own color. I often click down here to start and then perfect it by moving the sliders around. When you like the color you got, you hit return. And then go to the next color and double click it. Same thing happens. You could mix your own color from here, or you could start from down here and just figure out what it is that you want and adjust it. And you hit return or enter each time you like one. It's getting more interesting now, isn't it? I mean, frankly, for the rest of the day, everything you look at, I want you to study how nothing is a flat color. Nothing. Nothing. I just painted 2 rooms. Well, had somebody paint 2 rooms in my house, and this amazing pink near a window. And it's amazing how many pinks that one pink really is. Right. All right. What about adding colors to the gradient? So I want to say something. I really do advocate for a lot of 2-color gradients. That's the minimum, because they're clean, they're clear, but sometimes you need more. So how do you add colors? All right. Now, you'll notice the color stops are on the bottom of this gradient bar on the gradient palette itself. I'd like you to go to the lower edge of that bar. Notice a little plus sign should show up. I'm going to go in the middle here. So I'm looking at my gradient palette and I click once. Now, all it did was put a stop there, and it's matching the color that happened to be there. And in fact, give me a second here. I want to just make this a little neater. So, guys, again, if you dragged way out here, right, I'd like for you to just drag a brand new bar. Don't touch the existing bar yet. Just go from side to side. I want to make sure you can see all your colors. And then I want you to come back down here for a minute. So if you missed that last step, all I was saying is to add a color, come to the lower edge and click to add a color stop. Now to pick a color for it, you double click the new color stop and pick any color you feel like. If that worked, I'd like, oh, at least I'm seeing some smiles now. You know, it is a little hard to smile at 10 in the morning, especially when the teacher's wagging his finger about whatever. But art makes it all better. I love art. It redeems so many things. All right. So if that worked, add another color. If it didn't work, ask me now. What if I promised to raise your grade if you asked a question? Would everybody be like, oh, what's your favorite color? Does anybody have a question for me, please? No? All right, great. I'm going to add a color too then. But I should mention this while I'm at it. So you hit return to accept your color, which I'd neglected. These 3 can be dragged. Now, we were dragging around with the gradient tool, right, to establish the order they go in, right? So we did that before. But what if you just wanted to move one color? Now, I've been cheating a little bit. I'm showing you mostly gradient palette methods. Soon I'm going to show you more about this particular bar. But let's come over here to the gradient palette. I want you to take that color you just made and drag it to the left or the right. And watch how it changes things. Now, I want you to imagine, it's easiest to imagine a big sky that you're working on, of course, or even, like I said, the wall of a room. But even if you're working on somebody's sleeve, look at mine, right? It's clearly light here and dark here, you know? So I would probably design this without all these wrinkles, get my gradient down, right? And then draw separate shapes for the wrinkles and fill them with colors, shadowy colors, maybe some highlight shapes. But first, I just get the shape, make sure it has the general light and dark on it. All right, so I'm moving my color over, and I'm making a new color for myself. I'm gonna just pop any old color in there. So I got a 4-color gradient. All right, I wanna make something with you, all right? So this is gonna be a practical exercise right now. Oh, you know, let's just do one more thing together. So this tool keeps growing, and it keeps growing, and right now it's grown so much that I don't need the gradient palette as often as I used to because of this bar that I've been avoiding. Now the thing about this bar is I've been asking you to make ones of your own so that you don't feel trapped by the bar that just shows up. But I also do want to show you something about using the bar also. The first thing I want to show you, which I absolutely love, it's relatively new to the program, is this. I don't have to double click the color stops here. I could color step right on my drawing. So go to one of your color stops and double click it here. Now, this is even better because here I am, let's say this was someone's face, or this was like I was saying earlier, a wall, or the leaf, a big leaf on a plant. I could choose the color I don't like and double click it and come right over here and start adjusting it to really see exactly what it is that I'm after. I hit return to accept it. I can go to another color stop and double click that. This is great. It used to be you have to look here always to adjust the color. More recently, a year or two, a couple years maybe, you've been able to double click these and change the color from here, which I find superior because I can see what I'm doing. I still have to hit return to accept it. That's getting more and more practical at this stage, right? What else can you do with this thing? Well, you could grab the left or the right and actually move the whole bar. You know, I prefer to create my own bar over and over again, as I've been doing since we started today, but you could conceivably grab the end and do that, or do this, or even drag it out like we were doing earlier as a way to adjust what you already started. I'm going to go to the other end, and that just moves the whole bar around. Very different. Guys, I am very sorry to have my phone ring during class. But I have somebody who has to be let in, so I have to leave my phone on. Hey, is the bar working for you? Yeah. All right. So you know something? It occurs to me that I could do almost everything with that gradient bar now. I don't need the gradient palette as much, but there's a couple of things that it could do that I really, really like, and I want to go over one of them right now. If you look on the gradient bar, you'll notice these three, not the gradient bar, the gradient palette, this one right here. There are three types of gradient. And this is the only place I could find that lets you change them. We've just been in linear, probably the most useful. The next one here is radial. Could you click radial? Now, radial, obviously, radiates outward, meaning that the first color is the middle in this case, right? And you could double click that first color if you want to prove it to yourself and change it and hit return. So in this particular case, I could drag that thing around if I wanted to. I could change the width of it. But what I'd like for you to do now that you changed to radial is to go back to your gradient tool. So remember, your gradient tool is probably still selected, but you could double check. Why? Because I want you to see this. When I press, that's the new middle of the gradient. And if I drag outward, you could see what I'm getting. Now, you see this in nature all the time. This is the kind of light that hits a wall. You know, let's say there's a high window on the opposing wall, right? So in that case, I might actually see a radial color. It's not always obvious which one you need. What I do want you to remember, though, is the only way that I know of to change from linear to radial is the gradient palette. And the reason I keep repeating it is the tool on the toolbar does so many things, you might just forget that there is a gradient palette. You know, I keep asking if you have questions only because so few of you are comfortable asking questions. But you're all good, huh? How you doing, Li Wei? All right? Nice. You good?
I'm good.
All right. All right. Okay. Let's make something. Could everybody get that black arrow, however you like to do it, and delete that shape? Now we're about to make an object and I want to describe it to you. I must have something just like it in my house. But I want a big urn. So it's kind of like, a bit like a bowl, but if anyone's ever seen a South American rain barrel, they're often big round jugs. It's more like a jug, except for it has a wide mouth. So I'm going to ask you to join me this way. Could you get the Ellipse tool? Now, this tool is hiding under the rectangle tool, but it does have its own shortcut, which is the letter L. So the two ways to get to it is to press on, if you're in the rectangle, press on it, keep the mouse pressed down to find the other tools. I do want to mention in passing, most of these tools that have a little triangle on it, all the ones with a little triangle, are hiding other tools. So there's a lot of tools in this program. Right now, I'm going to this one. You could just press L on the keyboard and it should take you directly to it. All right, I'm going to ask you to make a wide oval, not a circle, a wide oval, something like that. Now, using your current gradient, I'd like you to move to the gradient. Well, you know what? Let's get the gradient tool. I'd like for you to press and drag from left to right. And then I want you to notice the 3 color stops. So not the handles on the outside, these 3 color stops. I want you to take the first one and drag it all the way to the left, if it's not already there. Take the middle one and let's temporarily put that in the middle. And make sure that the last color stops on the right. Thing is, I really only want 2 colors. So you might remember earlier, I had you drag colors off from here by pressing and dragging down, but you could also do that here. So I'm going to press and drag down to pluck it off. So what I'm saying is I want 2 colors on extreme opposite ends. We're going to talk about light and shadow now. So I want you to imagine something for a minute. If you had a orange ball, right, hit by a strong light on one side, right, with a very strong shadow on the opposite side, what color would the light part be? What color would the shadow be? One could argue the light part is light orange, right, and the dark part is dark orange. But how do you make that as an artist? Is it always about mixing with black or white? Not really. I mean, orange things tend to have more yellowish highlights. It's not always true, depends where they are. You know, they might have red shadows, quite possibly. So let's start by imagining whatever color ball you want to imagine, whatever, right, oval, right? But here's the rule. The one on the left, the color on the left has to be very light. The color on the right has to be very dark. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to click the leftmost color, double click it, and I'm going to go right to some kind of yellow. That's pretty light. Then I'm going to hit return. I want to go to the other side, double click it, because this is very subtle and I want a much more extreme light and shadow. You'd be wise to do the same. So let's double click the second color. And imagine what color this object would be even darker. That's going to be up to you, right? How you see it. And I want to be very honest about artistic freedom here. There's a lot of artistic freedom in this. Van Gogh saw light and dark very different than Michelangelo or Da Vinci. They had a completely different way of looking at light and shadow. You're entitled to your own way of looking at light and shadow also, but I do want you to make sure that they're extreme. All right, when you're done with those 2 colors, hit return. Now, I would just want to mention quickly what that little diamond is. Have you noticed there's a little diamond like on that gradient bar? It shows up both on the object itself as well as on the gradient palette. And all it means is that's the 50% mark. So I can move this one or this tiny one here to do the same thing. I wish I had more light on the left. So I'm just going to grab this part and move it over. Get the kind of light that I want. Now, what I want to do is show you how you'd make the inside of that object, right? Right now, it's like I said, it's like a flattened kind of ball, but that's not really what I want. I want it to feel hollow. I'm going to give it a mouth. And what would the light look like when we're looking through the mouth of it? The only thing that concerns me is I'm going to want to use the same gradient in a different way. And I'd rather you not lose it. So what we're going to do is save our gradient that you just made. Now, the Swatches Palette is the best place, actually, the only place to save your colors, whether they're flat or not. And we only did it once, right? So I want to go over it. Now, your object selected, you see your gradient. That means your fill box is already in front, right? So all you have to do is go to your Swatches palette and click this little plus sign. Now look, if you skip this step, it wouldn't break it. It really wouldn't. This step's just a convenience. So you come to the little plus sign and you click it. It's asking you to give it a name if you want to bother. You know, I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to click OK. Oh, wait a second there. That didn't do what it should. Give me a minute. Hey, if you did the same thing as me, Command Z. This is, you know, again, every version changes the way this behaves, and that's been the method for ages. So just give me a second here. Well, let me try a press and drag approach. All right, we're going to have to press and drag instead. It switched to a flat color for me. Might have worked for you, but if it didn't, Command Z, I love Command Z, so you can see your gradient again. And to save it, just drag it right from the gradient palette into here. I already did it, so I don't want to do it twice. And you should see it there, saved. That was weird. Did saving the gradient work? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You know, guys, forgive me for asking you all the time, but the teachers who don't ask you, they don't care as much. You know, I'm not, really, I have to admit it. Adi, are you talking to me because your mic's off?
I said, oh snap.
That was a little mean, right? But, you know, that was mean. Can I take it back? Do I have to delete that from my YouTube video?
I think you're good.
No, I got to admit, when there's too much to do, I don't ask you all as often either, to be honest, because there's just too much to do. But this stuff's really important. I want to make sure people aren't bluffing me and tell me at the end of the semester, man, I hated gradients, never got the hang of gradients. I'm like, why didn't you ask? All right. So look, about saving it, that's a convenience. I want to get to the next step. We need the oval tool again. So this time I want you to switch back on your oval tool, right? So it's way up here. Letter L is a way to get there. Now what I want you to do is watch this for a minute and then do your own version of it. I'm dragging an oval and I'm starting to imagine what a mouth might look like on this object. And when I got it in the ballpark, I'm going to switch to the black arrow so I could move it around and even change its shape with the black arrow to get it to look something like that. And you could tell I'm off the ground. I'm going to do it one more time. So I'm asking you to get the oval tool, press and drag to take an educated guess about what you think the mouth might look like. But you're going to need the black arrow to perfect it. So after you draw your oval, you know, drag it up. You know, the mouth of the object's going to be toward the top. See if you need to change the sides of it. Now, what's interesting is it's using the last gradient you used. So even if you hadn't saved it, you would have been fine. But what if you chose to do this 2 hours from now and you wanted that gradient back? Then you'd be glad that you had saved it. But there's one more step at the very least to really make it sing, right? So when I'm imagining what you're seeing is something similar to mine. Strong light on the left, strong shadow on the right, but for both your ovals, but that's not what would actually happen. I want you to try something on faith with me, and then I want to explain why it works. I need to reverse the gradient. Now that's why the gradient tool is so awesome. Do you remember when we were dragging, the first place you clicked was color number 1, and then when you let go was the final color? So what if I just drag from the right to the left? So I'm going to ask you to ignore this bar because it's just going to confuse you in this case. It confuses me. I'm just going to go right above it until I could, you know, make sure I don't see anything weird, just this. And I'm going to drag from right to left. Reversing it. Remember, it's up to you where you drag. This is, you know, this way or the other way. So what you're looking for is you want to drag a new bar completely for yourself in reverse. I want to explain why that looks so much more dimensional. But, and I'm trying to mind read from the distance to see if anyone's having a problem. And everybody looks sort of neutral today. Neither excited nor in agony. I have to accept neutral. Neutral's acceptable. All right? Why did it work? Why does it look different? So here's what I'd like for you to bear with me. Have you ever tried to take a photo of someone facing the sun? You know, like they're over there and you're facing the sun and you get it out and it's all in silhouette. It's like a shadow, right? You can't really take a photo of somebody if you're facing a light source. The light Well, one might argue the light's coming in the camera, but that's not really what the issue is. I wonder if this would work. Let's see. Here you go. So the light's coming from my window and it's hitting my mug on this side. But if you look inside my mug, it's opposite, because the light's coming over the wall and hitting this side. This is great. I can't do this in class. This is new. So the light comes over the wall, so to speak. That's why this side's dark, and it hits the opposite side. So this is very often the case. The light hits a column on the outside, but if you should happen to see the inside, you have to deal with the fact that it reverses. The way light works, it just can't hit here unless I had another light source. You're going to need to make things dimensional. Now, one thing we're not going to do this semester, but I had to do the last couple of years at FIT, was we had to do renderings of real products in the world. You know, real products. We had to do super realistic versions in Illustrator of them. And by the way, everybody was terrified of that project, everybody. And then everybody was like, I can't believe I was able to do that. The work was amazing. But the product design, the departments that focus on product design asked us not to do that. It was too close to their work. So we're going to do something different with these same tools. I want to mention a few things just as artists, though. If your colors are dead on, you might not want the strokes. The strokes are not helping my work at all. They look kind of dumb. They look like color by numbers in this case. If you'd like to take the strokes off, please join me. I want you to press and drag over your object. In other words, you're selecting both of those objects. Bring your stroke box to the front. You could either use the X on your keyboard or just press the stroke box. And then you have to find color of none to turn the strokes off. It's right here underneath the stroke box, but it's also on just about all the color palettes. That little red slash. Then I'm going to come back and deselect to show you the difference. So this is what it looks like without black outlines. I want to do one more thing and then take a short break. I'm trying to say that if colors sing, there's no need to interrupt them with lines. The world doesn't have lines, right? The lines are a conceptual thing. You know, a zebra might arguably have lines, but most things are not. It's just where light meets shadow that makes things appear to have a line. It's just light meeting shadow. So I'm going to ask you to get your rectangle tool and join me in a quick experiment. I want you to put a big rectangle right over your object. And then I want you to send it to the back. I'd love to know how many of you remember how to do that. Could someone shout out, how do I send that to the back? You have to turn the mic on.
Then the right bracket.
Close.
Command left bracket.
Left bracket. Exactly. All right, give me a second. That's telling me we're going to take a break in a minute. That little bell. Yeah. So with the object selected, Command left bracket. Just make sure it's selected. Command left bracket. Okay, that's one object. Command left bracket is behind the next object. I want to point out a couple little things. It looks pretty cool. So I want to say a little bit about gradients and light in general. You know, one thing is if you go into a room with a really ambient light, atmospheric light, right, everything's changed by that color. You know, if I teach in one of the pink rooms that I have in my house, you could bet I'd be much pinker than I already am, and so would everything near me, right? So the fact that we're using a similar background color makes that urn feel more believable. It really is sitting in air. You know, air has color, believe it or not. You know, it's not entirely transparent. Thing is, you might not like it. So if you get the gradient tool now, right? So your background is selected. You got the gradient tool. So the gradient tool is only going to work on that object. You could try whatever you want to do. You have to select the object. Always bring the fill box in the front if you're working with gradients. And then you could change it in any way you want. There's a much more dramatic light source that I've got. Hang on, let me just move this out of the way. Right, here's light coming from the other direction, which I think looks better. This is the way others would do it. They like the background behind your shadow side, and the shadowy background behind the light side. It makes the product stand out. I mean, you could try anything and just trust yourself to see what would work. if you like, you could just try completely different colors. In fact, I want to do one more thing with you. I want to change the background to a linear gradient. This whole exercise could have been done either linear or radial. We just happen to be in radial. So make sure that the background is selected. You see the anchors on it. Make sure you've got the fill box in front, and make sure you have the gradient tool. You might remember that I said earlier, oh no, someone's been locked out. Another person? I can't stand it. Give me a moment. Stephanie, I'm very sorry you had to wait so long. You're going to need to wait a minute while I talk to you. I have to finish this demonstration.
No, it's okay. My camera's not gonna be on because I don't feel good today.
Okay. Thanks for telling me.
No problem. Sorry.
So hang on, and we'll talk in a moment, you and I. Remember, the only place to actually change the type of gradient is from the gradient palette. This was linear. This was radial. I'm going to ask you to switch to linear for a minute. And now drag some new bars just to see how that feels. Right? It's also really nice, very atmospheric. Right? The first click establishes the first color. Wherever you release establishes the last color. Right? I want to remind you, you could change colors either from the bar or from the gradient palette just by simply finding the color stop and double clicking it. I like that much more natural. You can go to any of your color stops, double click it if you want to change the color. Don't like that one, doesn't feel believable. And I'm trusting my gut. It's not all about color theory. It's definitely about how it feels. All right. So I want to ask you all before the break, does anybody have any gradient questions you'd like to ask me now? We are going to review this, take it further. You're all right for now? Everybody looks like measured all right, you know, cautiously optimistic, which I think is very wise. You know, you will master this tool if you want to. It's not really that hard, but it's very, very flexible, and it does even more than this. All right, it's 10:24 in, so let's call it 10:25. We're going to, let me just get a look at my own handout for a minute just to make sure I'm not too far off. I'm pretty far off because we had some tech issues, a little bit of tech issues. I want to switch to the pen tool. I'm going to have to make this a relatively short break. We're going to take a 15-minute break. So that would be 10:40. Guys, listen, don't be late, right? Like, I cannot believe that I had almost an entire class late. That's not FIT. I got to tell you something. Your teachers are not going to stand for it, right? Really. And I know most of you have really good reasons, so you could ignore me. Take it with some salt on it, sugar on it, whatever you want, you know. But you got to figure out a way around it somehow, right? It set me back, right? A part of it is also Zoom, right? Usually you could sneak in late. Now you can't do that because it's insisting on the waiting room. Stephanie, I just want to say to you real quickly, that's why you couldn't get in. There was some kind of Zoom change that wouldn't let me turn off the waiting room. So you were locked in there while I was busy teaching and I didn't see you knocking on the door. All right, folks, we're going to come back at 10:40. We're going to do more fun stuff. I'm going to stop complaining unless somebody else comes even later. She was sick. Can't really blame her. Stephanie, stick around for a minute. Everybody else, go enjoy your break while you can. 10:40. Wash up, grab a coffee, whatever's good for you, right? I'm going to pause my recording, and I'll see you all at 10:40. Stephanie, stick around just for a second, all right?
Okay.
I just need to stop my screen share. I want to pause. Hello again, everybody.
What's up?
What's up? Well, I want to take a detour from the gradient tool, which that was a fairly thorough introduction. And to be honest, with just those skills alone, one could go very far. We'll see how it fits in for us in the following weeks. right now I want to return to the pen tool, which we just scratched the surface. So I want to go do a quick review of what we learned last time, and I want to move us forward into more control of curves, which is really where the tool shines and where the challenge is. So let's see. I'm recording, right? Do you guys all see the recording light? For some reason, that doesn't show up in my end. Great, thank you. All right, so let's return to Illustrator. And if your computer can handle it, you could just leave this document out in case you want to mess with it later. Let's open up a brand new document though. So let's go to the File menu and do File menu, New. For this particular exercise, I want to go back to a letter size document. And I'm just going to punch in the numbers manually. So let's go over to where it says 8.5. Double check that it says inches. And I want you to go to the height and pop in 11. And that's going to be a vertical orientation. I shouldn't have to click this guy, but it's always helpful to click it to be sure, so it doesn't accidentally turn it sideways. All right, 8.5 by 11, letter size document, just click create. All right, what I want to do is quickly go over a couple things regarding the pen tool. I want to start a little differently today, and I'm going to go kind of quickly at first until I get to the new material, right? So I'd like everybody to get the rectangle tool, right? And make yourself a rectangle. Fairly large one would be helpful for this first thing. And I'd like you to give it a fill. Now, I want to say a couple things about the pen tool. Right now, I'm going to start the opposite way I did last time. We're going to use the pen tool to adjust something that's already drawn, like the rectangle tool. And then I want to get back to working from scratch, drawing with the pen tool itself. So you got a rectangle, you got it with a fill. Now, I want to remind you that in my very, very strong opinion, the white arrow and the pen tool always go together. White tool, pen, white tool, pen. It's really called the direct selection tool. Now, it turns out the command key on a Mac and the control key on Windows gives you the last selection tool that you used. The problem with that is there's three. There's the black arrow, the regular selection tool, the white arrow, the one we want, the direct selection tool, and the group selection tool, which we haven't yet tried. So the only way to know is to click the white arrow once, then go to the pen tool. That sounds weird, but if you do that, from then on, every time you hold down Command, you could click an anchor and move it. If you didn't do that, it might think you're in the black arrow and it would have moved the whole shape. So if you click the white arrow, then click the pen tool, I'd like you to hold down Command if you're on a Mac, hold down Control if you're on Windows, click an anchor to select it, then press and drag it. Is that working? All right, the next thing is I want you to move a path. So a path is going to take both of its anchors with it. The rectangle started with 4 sides. That's 4 separate paths to make the object. You could grab any one of them. So I'd like you to hold down Command, choose the side, and drag it. You notice those 2 anchors travel with it. The other 2, you might say, are anchored to the page. So by holding down Command, you could do that even though you're in the pen tool. Now, why would we do that? Well, I'm going to let go of Command. I'm back in the pen tool. The reason I might do that is maybe I want to add anchors. So if you go carefully in the middle of any path and click, you've made an anchor. And if you want to move it, then you hold down Command or Control. So I'm going to do that again. If you want to add a path, add an anchor to your path, choose a side. Out here, the pen tool has a little star next to it, an asterisk. But if I get on a path, a plus sign shows up. That's reassuring, because if I click, I know that it just added that. I could now hold down Command or Control to move it in any number of ways. What else will the pen tool do on this object that used to be a rectangle? Well, it'll let you take an anchor out. You see, if you're between anchors, it knows you want to add. But if you're on an anchor, it gives you a minus sign. So you could click and take it out. And what's amazing about that is since you know the wide arrow trick, you click it once, then get the pen tool. You could do all these crazy things with the pen tool. You could modify objects that it didn't even draw by adding anchors and moving them or taking out anchors. And also you get to avoid these tools. You never needed this tool because the tool was smart enough to know when you wanted to add an anchor. Or this tool, because the tool was smart enough to know when you took it out. This tool we haven't done enough with yet, but we're getting there. Right? So I'm going to go back to the main pen tool only, and I'm making sure that I'm not using this one, the curvature tool. Right? Today we're focused on the traditional pen tool. All right. So I'd like for everybody to select your object, and the best way to do that, if you're in the pen tool now, is to hold down Command or Control and click inside. You'll notice all the anchors turn blue, which means you just selected the whole object. Delete it. So this is going to take some concentration, right? The whole idea right now is mastering the tool that's considered complex. I'm focusing very, very much on how the wide arrow and the pen tool work as a team. You know, as it turns out though, my next exercise would prefer a wide document. So let's open up a new document. Could everyone do File, Menu, New? I think to keep things simple, I am going to use the same numbers that we have on the right, right? I'm just going to click this little guy here, which swatches, swaps them. So now it's an 11-inch width and an 8.5-inch tall. So it's going to be like that. So 11-inch wide by 8.5 inches tall, and let's click Create. Okay, I want you to always do the same steps. Click that white arrow, then click the pen tool. I want you to add something with me right now, though. I want to take the fill color out. Now, I have a white fill, so I might not even notice it until I went too far. Right? Right now, it's kind of behaving. It's not causing me any trouble, but I would like no fill at all. So bring the fill box to the front and click Color of None. Click the white arrow. Every time before you use the pen tool, often enough, you want to turn your fill color off. All right, just to warm up, I'd like for everybody to make some kind of shape made of straight lines. What that means is you never press and drag, right? Because that produces curves, which we're going to focus on in a few minutes. Right now, I want you to make any kind of shape based on straight lines. So you just click, you choose where you're going to go, it gives you a little preview, and you click to close the object when you're ready. That's the best time to give it a fill, is after it's closed. Now you already know you can move those anchors around by holding down Command or Control if you're on Windows. So I've got a lot of control about what I do with this object because of that trick. Whenever I let go of Command, if I want to start adding anchors, I can do it. I want to point something out. I would love to have a hammer that just turns into a screwdriver. That'd be so much better than climbing down the ladder to get the screwdriver. I wish I could just hold a button and it'll be a screwdriver, and then another one to make it a wrench. That's what we're doing. The star is the pen tool of this conversation, but we're using it with the wide arrow without ever going back to the toolbar. I want to do an exercise with you right now, so I'm going to ask you to delete whatever you have. I'm holding down Command, I'm clicking in my object, and I'm deleting it. Let's turn the grid on. View menu. View menu. Show grid. Now, this is just to help us with this exercise. I want you to visually select one of the horizontal lines. This is going to be my boss here, this line that I'm showing you. I haven't clicked yet, I'm just pointing it out, right? Now, I'm not going to click anywhere above it, ever. And I'm not going to click anywhere below it, ever. What I want to make is a continuous curve. Now, don't join me just yet. I want to show you something. So what I'm looking for is something that's going to look like this. But frankly, I can't really do that with the pencil tool without it looking wonky. Now, I'm going to do it with the pen tool, and there's only going to be anchors along that line. So let me delete this and do it the right way. So again, I click the white arrow, I get the pen tool, and I make sure my fill color is off. All right, so I'm only drawing with line right now. That's the stroke. Now, please watch before you jump in. Let me go a couple little laps. I'm going to press, drag straight up. Notice I only pressed in the middle. So it knows I made a curve. I didn't click. I pressed and dragged. I move over, and I press and drag straight down. And I'm noticing where those handles go, because if they're similar lengths, it's going to be symmetrical. I dragged up the first time. This time I drag down. Watch this. Press up, release. I move over, press down, release. I move over, press up. Now I'm going to do this one more time, and I'm going to ask you to join me if you haven't. The tool's set. So I'm coming over here, and not to click and release. You press and you drag and decide how far you're going. I'm going up maybe 3 little boxes, and I'm going to let go. But I only press along the line that I originally decided. So I'm moving over. Now the first time I dragged upward. This time I press and drag downward. I want to focus on alternating. I move over and I press and I drag upward. This is called the continuous curve exercise. It's a very common exercise to get to know about curves. Press and drag down. I move over and I press and drag up. And it's giving me pretty perfect continuous curve. So one of the rules about what we're doing right now is you make sure never to press in the wrong place, like up here, right? It ruined it. The anchors are the ones in the middle. And if you dragged up the last time, I dragged down the last time. So you alternate. This one goes up. This one goes down. This one goes up. I'm going to be a little bit more particular right now about what makes it look symmetrical. Why are the peaks all the same height? And why are these depths down here all the same height? Well, here's the reason. When I move over to make the next one, I press and drag down. But notice that tail, the handle on the tail end? That tail is letting me know if it's matching its partner. Once it matches it, I've got a symmetrical hill, a curve that's perfectly balanced. I'm going to move over here and drag up and show you the same idea. I'm pressing to drag, but it's the tail that I'm actually watching. If the tail matches its partner, I get balance. Otherwise, I'll get that. Sometimes I want that. But right now, we're looking for balance and symmetry. So I try to match them. I'm using the grid to help today. You move over, you press only when you're ready to make your new object, and you don't release. Because if you accidentally click, right, you can't fix it too easily. Right? I'm going to wind up creating that. All right, if it went well, wonderful. If it went terribly, no problem. Could you select all and delete it? Command A or Control A and press delete. I want to do it one more time, right? Now, while you're doing it, if it isn't behaving, see if you could formulate a question for me, right? Right? But I do want to tell you all, if it's working, great. If it isn't, I want to be frank. I couldn't get this tool at first. My teacher, who was excellent, wasn't so excellent on this tool. It was another student who was, who actually came over and said, oh, try this way. And suddenly it bloomed for me. So be patient with yourself if necessary. All right, let's do it again. I want you to make another one. Now this time I'm going to do a little different just to keep you all interested. I'm going to press up, and I'm not going straight up. I want a different kind of curve. So you notice how I'm leaning over a little bit? When I move over, I'm going a little further out. I'm drafting down, and if I want symmetry this time, it's got to be a mirror image of its partner. See, this is going to tilt it, but this is what I'm looking for. When I go to the next curve, this is the underside curve. I press and drag, and I watch the tail. Again, I'm looking for a mirror image of that tail that looks like its partner, and that's what's going to give me that perfect kind of balance that you see on icons and pictograms and highly graphic objects. Doesn't have that freehand look that the pencil tool had, which I also love. Now, if at any point you'd like to make a change and you followed that earlier instruction, earlier you'd click the white arrow, then you could hold down Command or Control whenever you want to and make changes. You could move your anchors, you could adjust your handles, and actually, you could even drag right on a curve and move it. But that's with holding down Command or holding down Control. The coolest part of that trick is it still knows where I left off. It didn't interrupt my workflow. I could just come right along here and continue. So anytime you want to make an adjustment, knowing that trick, you hold down Command or Control and just make the adjustment you want. Then I could continue if I choose to. If you want to end the line, you want to deselect it, you'd hold down Command again or Control and simply click off of the line, and it's safe. Is that going okay? It's a little more challenging. I want to do something quick with you to combine this with gradients. So if you have a curve right now, I'm going to take a small diversion, come back to the pen tool. You know, it so happens this type of continuous curve looks like it wants to be a ribbon. And I want to show you how I'd make it a ribbon using a combination of tools you've already learned, right? Make sure that your line is deselected, right? So in other words, if you're seeing anchor points, right, hold down Command or Control and click off. What I want to do is copy it. And unfortunately, to do that well, I'm going to need the black arrow. So that's going to disturb this pen tool trick, but that's all right. I'm going to get the black arrow, and you could join me if you want. Remember, the black arrow will always select a whole object. So you get the black arrow, you select it, and I want you to Option drag, or Alt if you're on Windows, to make a copy. So now we've got two identical continuous curves. You can see it almost looks like a ribbon. If you miss that last step, it's only the black arrow that's going to work because the white arrow is just going to pull anchors. We want the whole thing. So I got the black arrow manually, clicked it, Option dragged on Mac, or Alt drag to make a copy. Hey, did making the copy work? Remember, we did buildings, we did other things like this. All right. I want to close off the ends, which is another thing the pen tool's great at. So let's go back and get the pen tool. You know, I think I'm going to click the white arrow first, right? So that trick works. Click the white arrow. I know it's weird. Just click it and then get the pen tool. If I want to close these ends, I just have to activate an anchor. So I'm going to bring my pen tool over here. Notice a little slash is there. That means, okay, just click it and I'll know you're continuing from here. So I just click it. Then I come up here, I get a different icon. That's the connector icon. And it closes it. I want to go to the other end and I'll see the same behavior. A little slash means activate that anchor. And then I'm going to come down here and close it.
Somebody's in the waiting room. Their connection went out.
Really? Okay, thanks for telling me. That's very nice of you. I really have to master this. All right. Sorry about that, Sunaya, but you guys are going to have to work with me, right? I need people to be on time, partially just because of the Zoom problem. All right. If you got your object closed, click any fill. You know, bring your fill box to the front, right? And fill it. If you're a little bit late before, I apologize. This is 11 o'clock, so that's about an hour and 50 minutes in. That means on the video, you could always go, say, an hour and 40 in just to watch this part of the show again, an hour and 40. All right, I filled it with the color. You can see it looks quite a bit like a ribbon, but I'm going to show you a cool gradient trick. Again, because we have a lot to do today, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to review this today. So if you're with me, you're in pretty good shape. Otherwise, watch and get what you can for now. All right, let's switch to the gradient tool and click inside the fill. You might have to double click, turns out. So it switched to that black and white gradient, and that's fine for me. I just want to show you what I want to do. Watch exactly. Right? I switch to a gradient by double-clicking in the fill with my gradient tool. And now I'm going to take the black and drag it all the way over here because I'm focusing just on this. Now I got light on the left, dark on the right. Now I want to show you the coolest trick because I want light here and dark here, light here, dark here, light here, dark here to alternate. I love the option trick and the alt trick because it doesn't only copy lines, it doesn't only copy shapes, it even copies color stops. So watch this. Just know I'm on a Mac and I'm holding down my option key, right? If you're on Windows, you're going to have to hold down your alt key. Watch this. I'm holding down option. Isn't it? Now is my family pack. You guys say hi, right? They're all waving back. Yeah, you guys are the best, you know that? I really wanted you to tell you that. That's sweet. We're all in school at my house. My wife works in a school. My daughter goes to the school. All right. So, all right. Watch this copy trick. I'm going to copy the light side first. So I'm holding down option on my Mac and I'm dragging it. Watch this. I go right over the shadow, right, until it looks good. I'm going to stop about here. I'm working on this one now. I copied the light. Now I'm going to copy the shadow. I hold down option again, drag the shadow right over it until I like that one. Pretty cool. So I'm going to keep doing the same trick. Every time I need light, I'm going to steal this one. Hold down option or alt, drag it over. Trust your eyes at this point till you like the way it looks. And let go of the hand first, the mouse, you know, the touchpad, then let go of the key. So I'm going to hold down option. And so option dragging or alt dragging is used for many, many purposes. And I'm just going to keep on doing this till I get the lights where I want and the shadows where I want. Pretty darn cool. It would be extra cool if I took the stroke off of it and gave it a background. And you know, if you feel like you're getting the hang of this, you can go ahead and try it. I'm gonna do it very quickly. I've got my object, and to take the stroke off, I just have to bring the stroke box to the front. There it is. At the bottom of my toolbar, by the way. I brought the stroke box to the front and I click color none. So now it's really feeding into the whites behind it. In fact, I'm just going to give you a peek what it looks like without the grid. Lots of atmosphere. I'll put it back on. And of course, if I wanted, I could put some kind of background there. The same gradient's going to look pretty bad in the background. So I'm just going to change it to something else. Sorry, got to bring my fill box. Very convincing. All right, I do want to get back to the pen tool, but I just want to make a couple of points. You know, sometimes I showed you some pretty damn geeky exercises, like, why am I just doing this? You know, it's not ribbon class. I don't care if you ever draw a flag or a ribbon, right? But the same logic just keeps showing up. You know, if you need to draw something with perfect curves, this is the way. By the way, the same tools in Photoshop, it's usually used in Photoshop to select things. What if you wanted to put the Statue of Liberty in the desert? You know, you need a perfect selection around that statue, and you're going to go for the pen tool there. So a lot of what you learn here is going to translate to other programs that have the same tool. But it's about perfect selecting in some programs. It's about industrially perfect, as I said earlier, drawing in this program. Okay? And we just combined it with gradients, so you could start seeing how the juggling act works. I need to move to a different exercise, even though that one was kind of fun, and I attempted to play with it some more. You know, say things like, oh, well, if you had clicked the white arrow before, you know, and got to the pen tool, you can make all kinds of changes. Remember, I'm in the pen tool now, so I would have to hold down Command if I wanted to use any of those tricks I learned earlier, right? But everything's just going to modify with me. And one of the things that's so great about this tool is there's very few anchors. It's just very neat. All right. I know I'm pushing a little hard, but I'm going to ask everyone to open up a new document. Let's stick with the same size because I want to try something harder, at least get it started. This is not for us. Same size is fine, so you could just click Create. I think the grids were helpful last time, so let's turn the grids on again. That's the View menu, Show Grid. View menu, Show Grid. Now, I need for you to watch something because this is considerably harder. The letter M is not a continuous curve because it stops and changes direction. If you kept going like that, all the bumps would be on top, sort of like a bunch of mountains. And it's harder to do, so I need for you to watch before you join me. I forgot what tools I clicked and what I didn't, so I'm going to click the white arrow, click the pen tool, then I'm going to check that I don't have a fill color, not even white. Now I'm ready. I really recommend you watch before you join this particular exercise. I am going to choose a horizontal line and be devoted to it. So the first part is the same. I click and drag up. It's up to me if I want it to tilt or if I want it straight up. I go over a couple boxes and I click and drag down. I don't click and release. I press and drag. Now here's the problem. Now everybody look as hard as you can. This here I'm going to call the head. So this is the tail. This is the head. If the head is pointing down here, look what the pen tool expects. No matter where I plan my next anchor, it's giving me a little bit of curve beneath my line. But I want a letter M, and it's not going to have any little loop there. What that means is this can't stay here. This handle has to move. So look what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to explain it. I move it as close as I can, right next to its friend, and I let go of my mouse. Then I let go of the key. Then I move over and I drag down again. Now watch this one more time. What I haven't mentioned is, how do you move this? It's another use of the Option key, another use of the Alt key. I hold it down if I don't like where a handle is, and I can move it. So this is not the Command key. This is the Option key that I'm talking about, or the Alt key if you're on Windows. So in this case, I'm dragging down, but then I have to move the head because it's telling the next curve it should go beneath the floor, beneath that horizontal line. So I hold down Option when I'm ready, and I drag it up. I'm going to do one or two more, and then I'm going to do it all over and ask anyone who hasn't joined me to join me. See, without that, I could do continuous curves. This is what you learned before. But anytime I need to switch directions, I'm going to have to take the head and say, no, don't go there. Go here. And then I'm back to what's called discontinuous. All right. If you want to start again from scratch, select all, Command A or Control A, and press Delete.
What's the difference between that and when you just click like the most recent anchor point? Because if I just go back and click the last anchor point, it also makes it discontinuous.
That's not giving you total control. Let me see if I could try it. So if I draw this and I draw this, and I click it with Command down or just click it?
Just click it.
And then what do you do from there? You go on to here. See, if I do this, it's not symmetrical.
Okay.
So I'm going to try that again. I click it, I come over here, and it's not symmetrical because I don't have a handle here. But I must say, you're close to a secret that I'm still withholding for a little bit longer. You're onto something. All right. In any case, let's try it this way again so you have total control. You know, here's the bottom line of it, really. To have total control of a curve, you want a handle on both sides. Because really, the curve's two halves. You know, so if one is stretched, it's not symmetrical, you know, the other, but if I have control of both, that's why we want handles on both sides. So I'm going to start this one over. So same rules apply. I know I keep repeating, and I'm going to be merciless with it. Click the white arrow, get the pen tool, make sure there's no fill. All right. So I'm going to press and drag up. I'm starting dragging up. That's important. All right. I just want to stay simple as I can. I finish that curve with what you already know. The problem is continuing. Since I want all the mountains on top, I've got to move this. It's pointing the wrong way. So I hold down Option or Alt, and I bring it up. I move over here, and I continue. Now, every time I finish a mountain, let's call it, I have to move this if it's pointed in the wrong way. So I hold down Option, and I point it the way I want. And I move on. This is worth doing a lot of times. Of course, it would be fun to make a ribbon out of this and give it a gradient, but I don't think I want to do that today. I want to spend more time with the pen tool. So it's very important to understand, oops, you see, I made a mistake. So I've just sort of inadvertently almost showed you a trick that I'm getting to. Whenever you're ready, hold down Control, click off. So where the challenge begins, if you get this, is you learn two shortcuts that I'm really pushing hard on the pen tool. I gotta be honest, if you watch YouTube and watch videos about how to use the pen tool, they're probably gonna show you how to do it without the shortcuts. And is that wrong? No, not at all. Is it as good? No, it's not as good. And it's not because the shortcuts are fast. It's because if I want to continue a line, it won't work if I switch tools on the toolbar. We won't know where I left off. So I'm going to have to keep on figuring out how to connect my lines, and you won't be able to use fill colors later. The only way to keep it smooth in an elegant, intuitive way is to learn a little bit about these shortcuts. So the rules sort of go like this. You hold down Command if you're moving an anchor or you're adjusting a handle. But if you need to move a handle completely, you're using Option or Alt. And by the way, what that actually is this tool called the Anchor Point tool. Just a bad name. They used to call it the Direct Selection Point tool, and it was a worse name. I don't even know what a good
What
name
if you
would be.
accidentally click off? How do you continue the curve?
That's such a good question, and I'm a little afraid of that question, but what you're forcing me to do is show everybody a favorite trick. So folks, you know, I have to say, I only withhold stuff if I think, man, if I say 5 things in a row, I'm gonna lose them. So let me just say 3, save the other 2. But today I'm gonna take a little leap of faith. There's another way to do this that some of you are gonna like better. And maybe this is a good time to actually go over it. I've nicknamed it. It doesn't have a name. It's called I call it the sprout method, right? And I think some of you are gonna like this a lot more because it really gives you freedom. I wanna show you how it works. In fact, I'm gonna actually leave this grid for a minute. You leave yours on, okay? For a moment. I'm just gonna hide mine for a second. I just wanna show you something. So let's say I'm down here and I draw one curve and I wanna change directions, but I don't feel like dragging this all the way around. The sprout method works like this. You ignore the handle you don't like. You just ignore it. You hold down Option, and instead of dragging it, you start here and you sprout a whole new handle right out of it. What I love about this method is I just ignore the head handle and I tell the next one to go where I want. So every time, if I don't like where the head handle is, watch what I'm about to do. I'm gonna make a cloud. I hold down Option, sprout one going this way. So I'm coming around the side of my cloud, right? This one has to go down, so I'm gonna sprout a new one. I call it sprout because you're actually pulling a brand new handle right out of the anchor. I find that easier than dragging this miles around. And I know where I'm at. I'm talking about the next curve. Okay, next curve, go this way. I let go. This is an exercise I sometimes do with students, which I just call the cloud. So again, if you accidentally, blew it somehow in any which way, right, like that, it thinks I'm gonna make a straight line now. That's not what I want. Then just hold down Option, sprout a new handle right out of it. And I just have to mention something. It's too much information at once, and that's one reason why I review this so often. To close it, I have to hold down Option also. Doesn't look it, but it usually breaks. You see? if I hold down Option, when I close a curved object, it closes the way I want. Did that help with that last question?
Yeah. Thank
Great.
you.
So again, guys, I'm probably going to review both of these and let you choose which method you want to use. One method is Option dragging the handle where it ought to be. The other one is just sprouting a brand new handle right out of the anchor. They both use the same key, right? I have to tell you something. The early method is the standard you find in textbooks, tutorials. I was pretty late in my career that someone showed me I could do this sprout method. I personally find it much more friendly. Okay. I'm going to ask myself a question here. Let's see. You know what? I think everybody should try to join me on a cloud. So I'm going to ask you to select all, delete it. We'll do a few discontinuous curves. After we got 3 bumps, we're going to change directions and see what that feels like. So select all, press delete. I probably asked you before. Give me a second. I want to just quickly check something. I'm good. I hope, is anyone waiting for me in the waiting room? Boy, that waiting room thing was a headache. Can I ask you, just to make sure I'm not imagining it, you guys never went into a waiting room in my class before, have you? So why did that happen in the middle of nowhere? You know, I think Zoom is just trying to figure out new security without even alerting its clients. You know, I have a Zoom account. I didn't get an email or anything warning me that all my people are going to be locked in a room. So I got to figure that out. All right. So clear your stage, select all, press delete, and let's try this. This is going to start with a discontinuous curve. If you want to try it with the grid off, you're welcome to, right? You go to the view menu, and this is how I turn it on, if that helps you. If you'd rather turn it off, you can go back, view menu, go to the same spot. Where is it hiding from me suddenly? I'm used to using shortcuts for this stuff. Grid, grid, hide grid. All right, it's up to you. All right, I press, I drag up. I know that the middle is where the anchors go. So this time I'm doing it by eye. I press and drag down. Now this type of object needs me to change directions a lot. It's not a ribbon. So I have to move this. So I got a choice. I could hold down Option and start to move it, or I could hold down Option and sprout a new one. And it's going to come right next to its partner. I let go of the mouse or the touchpad, and then I let go of the key. I move over, and each time I finish a curve, I'm going to have to move it. So again, I hold down Option. It's up to you now. Do you move the handle, or do you sprout a new handle? Either way, it's Option on a Mac and Alt on Windows. So do 3 of these. Now this takes us up a notch because we're starting to understand that the handle that is in the head position is telling Illustrator where it thinks you're going to go. You know, it's telling Illustrator that, hey, okay, this artist wants to go down here, but we don't. I'm ready to go to the side. So I'm going to hold down Option. I'm choosing to use the sprout method. I'm coming off to the side. Remember, this is not an anchor. Only the square ones are anchors. So I'm going to come down here, press and drag this way. And you could feel it. If it doesn't look right, just don't let go until it feels right. Does this look like it's pointing the right way? I want 3 upside down arcs, and this is pointing to the side. So I could use either method. I could pull it down and go about my business. Or I could use the Option trick and sprout a new one. Just don't hide the other handle. You'll regret it later. Because, you know, I might want to adjust them. So every time you see the handles going the wrong way, right? Because this is what I'd get now. That's not what I want. So I have to make a new handle. I either move the handle or I make the new one with the sprout method. I got to go to the side again. I'm going to cap this off, end it. So I hold down Option, and I'm going to sprout one off to the side. The only thing that's really hard to remember is when you close a curved object, it breaks this because it insists on seesawing both sides of the curve. You might remember that from when we made hearts. But if I hold down Option or Alt, it'll let me just focus on the one that I have. Remember, at any point though, you could use the Command key instead to adjust parts as you figure out, what kind of cloud you're after. Mine didn't really feel as cloudy as I wanted it to. And I never really left the tool. I'm holding down
So-
Command. Yes.
When I connect my last anchor to like make my last curve, like the one that you have on the left, it changes the first one too when I drag.
Right. That's right. And your question is so clear that I think it's going to help other people get the answer. I've mentioned it a few times, but it just isn't clear. I want to do a quick explanation of that. When we were just doing straight objects, there was no problem closing an object, right? The problem is just on curves. The thing is, since it expects continuous curves, when I try to close an object up, which I'm going to do in a minute, it's going to adjust this side because it thinks it seesaws to be smooth, right? And that's not smooth, you can see it. So what you do before you close a curved object is you hold your Option key down while you close it, and then it won't adjust it in any which way. So I'm going to just put that in a simpler way. When you close a curved object, to make sure that it doesn't break your original curve, like that, hold down Option when you close it, and then it'll let you be the boss. You close it however you want. Adi, did that help? Okay. Yeah, that one's often left out of instructions. So I'm going to probably be repeating that a lot. I want to just say something just to take a breath of a sort, take a little break from that. The pen tool it's a weird tool. If you're hired in a workspace, whatever kind of job you're headed for, and you say I'm an Illustrator user, they're going to assume you've mastered this tool. Hey, Maya, you okay? You all right? Yeah, I can't hear you, but
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm fine. I was just
Fine.
looking down.
you're okay. I have a lot of students, when they concentrate, they always look like this. Not you, but they always look sad. And I was like, "Are you all right?" And they're like, "They're fine. They're just focused." Anyway, just coming back to the pencil, I mentioned to you, I think I did last time, that I was a very sloppy, messy kind of painter, a really wild style painter. When I learned this tool, I thought the tool was for the birds. I was like, "You gotta be kidding me! I'm never going to do this." But the more Illustrator I did, the more I saw what I could do with this tool. A small and perhaps goofy aspect of it was I was able to draw on the subway. The pencil tool and the brush tool depend on a very steady hand. You can't do that bouncing in a car or whatever, but the pen tool doesn't care how steady your hand is. It just goes from anchor to anchor. It's made for smooth. It was made by an engineer, a guy who designed airplanes, people say. So he was very focused on the continuous curves because he didn't want the air to be pinched. Letter M doesn't work on an airplane. All right, let me just take a quick look here, see where else I want to go. All right, it's 11:25. I want to just take a quick look at my own handout because I decided on the break that I wanted to skip a couple little things. I just picking which. I never really skip. I just bump them to the next week. I have enough time to begin one other little subject. It's just going to be a light introduction. So I want to combine subjects, actually. On the one hand, I want to talk about bringing scanned artwork or photographed artwork into Illustrator. On the other hand, I want to talk about using it to help you draw in Illustrator. A lot of you like sketching on paper. And traditionally, that's what folks like us do. Things are changing though, because the more comfortable you get on the computer, the less it matters to you if you're on paper or on a screen. But very often, I ask you for sketches each week. I asked you for sketches today. I'm not going to look at them, but I'm glad that you did them. If you must get some feedback before you go to the next step, you should email me a photo of that work, and I'll do my best to get to it. This is a little divergence for a moment. There's no way to cover all this material and look at your work together every week. I'm sure you see the logic of that. There's about 25 people in the class. There's also no way to get through this if you don't do the homework every week. So sometimes you're doing it just to do the right thing and be prepared for the following week's level of complexity. So if you have sketches now, you could tell where we're headed. In 15 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about what's due next week. Right now, I want to say, imagine you wanted to bring those sketches in. Let's say the sketch was so damn good, you want to bring it into Illustrator and do some pen tool right over it. Did everybody download today's assets? Now, if you came very late, you missed this part of the show, right? And I'm only going to say 1 or 2 words about it because I just can't keep reviewing for lateness, even if it's not your fault at all. It's not punishment. It's just the way school works out of necessity. So I'm only going to say one thing about it. If you came late and you want to try to join me, you'd have to go back to the home page and download Class 5 assets, right? That's going to go to your downloads folder. It's a compressed file, right? So you find your download folder after you downloaded Class 5 assets, and you double click it if you're on a Mac, or you right click it or control click it if you're on Windows. I'm not on Windows, but you would be seeing extract or extract all. Because all we want is this. Now, earlier today, some of you did this and you moved it somewhere else. You might remember I moved mine to the desktop. The actual unzipped file is called this, C Shapes Exercise. We're about to use it. So just know where it is. If you came too late and you're not comfortable downloading, just watch it today and it'll be all right. Right? I'm going to have to move forward though. So I want an 8.5 by 11 page to get us started. So let's back in Illustrator. Let's open a new one. File menu, new. I want a plain old letter size, but I want it vertically. So I could type the numbers in, but I'd rather just click this vertical guy. You know, we call that portrait when it's upright. Letter size, upright, plain old page, like that. Now, I've provided a sample. They're not really sketches, and I think I'm going to do that maybe next week, maybe the week after. I'm going to bring in some sketches from the fashion world, and we're going to turn them into Illustrator art, you know, perfect it. This time, though, I got an exercise for you. It's very similar steps, but we have to learn how to bring in a scan or a photo. So I'm talking about GIFs, not animated GIFs, regular flat GIFs, PNGs, if you've heard of them, JPEGs, I think you all heard of, you know, any kind of flat art that you took with your phone or with a camera or a scanner. It's called File Menu Place, right? This is going to become very important, so let's try to get a good start together. File Menu, Place. This is the only accepted traditional way to bring a photo in of anything. File Menu, Place. Now you have to remember where you put the picture. If you're still in downloads, the PNG is what I'm talking about, the unzipped file, right? If you moved it somewhere else because you're a neat type of person, go find it now. C Shapes Exercise. Now, before you click that blue place button, here's the critical moment, guys. Look at link. When you do File Menu Place, the minute you click an image once, don't double click it, once, you'll see this. The question is to link or not to link. Now, I know you guys are tired, right? So I'm going to come back to this subject a couple times till we get used to it. Today, I want you to uncheck link. Uncheck link. I want to tell you what this is all about quickly before we move forward. When you uncheck link, the photo, the scan, whatever you just placed, whatever you brought in, is part of the Illustrator file forever. So that means you send your friend the Illustrator file in an email, the photo's already in it. If you leave link on, the photo's not in it. It's linked externally to an outside photo. So when you send your friend the Illustrator file, the photo disappears. There are reasons why people do that. But for us, that just doesn't make sense. It's going to add a layer of complexity. If you uncheck link, the photo's embedded. I just want to say a quick reason why you might leave it on. If you're bringing in 20 photos and you uncheck link for all 20, the file gets heavier and heavier. If you know anything about file size, the file size gets bigger for every photo that isn't linked. And eventually it slows the computer down so you can barely use it. In that situation, we're going to force ourselves to learn how to manage linked artwork. Right now, it seems too much too soon. We're only bringing in one picture. Uncheck link and make life simple, right? It'll be embedded in there like a tattoo. Just try to leave house without your tattoo, right? It's not linked. So make sure this is not checked. You click the image, not checked, click place. 1/1 is telling you that this is the first of your set, but that there's only one in it. Doesn't say 1/10. I suggest you click in the top corner. Are you seeing it?
You used file open, right? Or did you?
No. File
Okay.
in place. Alda, your questions are very valuable to me. Please continue to ask. Because a lot of people are shy, and that's the natural thing to do file menu open. You know, we're not in Photoshop. I'm not opening the photo to work on it, right? I'm opening it to place it on a page. You know, like there's 20 products and I'm designing a poster. Place, 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 place. Draw the rest in Illustrator, right? So file menu place. Again, remember, this will be on the YouTube video. Okay, I'm gonna move a little bit quicker though. So I hope file menu placed worked, but here's the rules. File menu place, get your picture, uncheck link, then click the blue button, right? That's the rules. I'd like you to get your layers palette out next. So I'm going to go to the window menu where all the palettes live. Why do I need the layer palette? Well, I want to lock it. I'm going to do some heavy drawing. And if I draw on the same layer as the placed image, I'm going to get confused later. I'm going to keep on selecting the wrong thing. So I got my layer palette out. I'm coming right over here and I'm going to lock it. When you lock a layer, you can't touch it. You can't move it. You can't draw on it. It's safe. It's a good idea to lock layers, right? Especially one like this. I'm probably going to throw this layer out after the drawing's done, right? So next, you have to make a new layer to draw on. That's this little plus sign. Bring this out where everybody could see it a little better. This little plus sign. This is where the drawing's going to go. So we're on layer 2. The other layer is locked. Now, I want to zoom in on this umbrella, right? So you could zoom in anywhere you're comfortable. I was pushing the navigator on you guys only recently, so you might want to use it again. Window menu navigator, but there are other ways. If you don't want to use the navigator, do Command plus or Command minus if you go too far. Then hold down the space bar and drag the page. We're looking for the umbrella. We want to be close. Either use the navigator, which I did twice, so I don't want to go over it today. Or you could use Command plus. And then you have to hold down the space bar to move the page around. With the navigator, you just move the red box. I want to tell you what about this umbrella, especially the top part, and what these lines mean. We're going to start here. So I'd like you to watch me. I click the white arrow. I get the pen tool. I check that I have no fill. In this case, I need a stroke color because I don't have one. I don't want to draw with invisible ink. So I'll bring the stroke to the front. I'm just going to choose black. In other words, I'm just going to draw with line. Prepared my pen tool with the rules. White arrow first, pen tool. I turned off a fill, but I make sure I have stroke color. Watch this. These lines are helping you get a control of how long your handles need to be. The top of the umbrella is a big curve, so it gets a long handle. Here I go. Press and drag. If you think you're ready, you could join me. The next anchor, though, is way over here. So I'm going to press and drag, but this time I'm watching the tail. Oops. I'm going to do it again anyway. I think I was zoomed in a bit much. There we go. Let me just select all and delete again. The other layer's locked, so don't worry. This is where I started. If you'd like to start over, just select all and press delete. So the first one's easy. You press and you drag out to here because I'm making a very big curve. I come to the other side, I press and drag. I'm watching the tail, and the tail's about the same length. But since the umbrella's on an angle, it takes a little bit of thought. Now, you could tell that I'm going to have to switch directions. No matter what I do, that line's going to look wrong unless I move this handle. It's going to be the Alt or the Option method, right? Question is, do you want to use the sprout method or do you want to drag this handle? I'm going to do both. Hold down Option, I'm going to do the first method. Grab the handle, it needs to be shorter, and it needs to go here. It's starting this little curve. So again, I hold down Option or Alt and I grab the handle and I point it in the direction I want the next curve to go. I move over with nothing held down, press and drag, and I watch the tail. All right, that's pretty good. This is pointing in the wrong direction again. This time I'm going to do it with the sprout method. The key is the same. Option Mac, Alt for Windows. The question is, do you bother dragging it or you just sprout one of your own? I'm going to sprout one. To sprout, you start in the anchor and drag up. And move over, and I finish it. Now I'm going to sprout another one, right, because this is going the wrong way. Hold down Option. Anytime I want to switch directions. Now, as I believe it was Adi, as I was saying to Adi, if I don't hold down Option to close it, I'm going to break my umbrella. Ouch. So I have to hold down Option even when I'm closing it. And you're free to fill it with a color if you want. I'm going to need to save a little bit of time to talk about the homework, but not a lot. So I'm going to take this a little further. One thing I want to say about this exercise is if you're hungry for this, you're real serious, you want to master every tool presented to you at school. So later on, you're free, you make your own choices. Save this template I gave you, right? File menu place, lock it, make a layer, draw them all. Get to know the pen tool a little bit, right? In the future, you're going to do this with your own sketches. Right? So let's try a different object. I'm going to ignore the handle, it's too easy. I'm going to ignore the truck, which is also pretty easy. Let's see. Oh, look, they have a cloud too. Let's see. I think I'm going to start with this. Oh, it looks like a fan or something. So make sure you've deselected your last object if necessary. Press and drag up. Press and drag down, right? That we got very used to. I'm watching my handles closely. Once oh, look, you see I have the color on. I'm going to leave it on. I hold down Option. I press and drag to sprout a new one. And I'm just moving around. Every time I finish a curve, see that feels rather distracting. I usually turn it off till I'm done. But the main point is when you're done with a curve, if the head handle, is pointing in the wrong direction, you're going to have to move it with the Option trick or the Alt trick. Either drag it around or sprout it. They're both just as good. It's a personal choice. This is a common method, especially if you like drawing on paper. You do your thinking on the paper, and then now I'm going to straight lines. And you just bring it into the program. So the thing you're looking for is, can you start to tell when the handle's going in the wrong direction for your new curve? The last curve is great, fine. but it's going in the right direction for the new curve. I'll hold down Option. So this particular thing's giving you a map for now, and I expect you may quickly see. Now the fill's really causing me trouble because I can't see my sketch. Right now I can. I gotta keep changing the direction of the handles. Pencil universe. Again, I'm gonna hold down Option to make sure it closes right. So you can see what's going on here as I'm making these perfect industrial perfection style objects, right? I'm going to stop for a couple minutes and with the pencil, I'll just say a little bit about it. You know what I kind of hope as the old guy in the room is that all of you try different kinds of art and different kinds of tools. A bunch of years, but hopefully your whole life. I'm older, double the age of some in here, triple the age of some of you, and every year I'm trying new tools. You know, oh, what can I do with this? And then I learn to think in that tool to see if it expands my vision, my imagination. But if you are very commercially driven, you know, you really want to do work for the computer, the screen, TV, animation, web design, or you want to work for a magazine, or you want to work for books, or maybe you want to design board games, or forget board games, maybe you want to do the artwork for digital games. People will be very grateful when you produce vector art. So in day one, I said vector art really in day-to-day language means art based on anchors. And the reason people like this is they could change the sizes of your artwork as often as they need for any size. And you can't do that with Photoshop. But I will admit, Illustrator has a very clean kind of look about it. You know, and if we're looking for mess, you know, by the way, you can do that in Illustrator, right? We're just going to have to get more advanced. We'll learn about messier brushes and, you know, other ways to give it some grit. But right now, it's about clean lines. So what do you think of the pencil so far? Are you guys feeling okay with it? Yeah, some positives? The people who don't like it are staying strangely quiet. Like, I don't work for Adobe. I hated this tool. I really did. I tell you honestly, it was a student who showed me what I needed, you know, 20 years ago. Then I realized how fast it made me on, you know, to be very blunt. Sometimes you get a job and you just don't want it, but you want the money. You know, if a refrigerator company asked me to make a website for them, I would find out what it paid. You know, if the thing's $5,000, I'm going to say, yeah. I doubt I'm going to be dreaming at night. Yeah, I always wanted to do a refrigerator website, but to pay for the art that I love most, I make sure to learn a lot of tools, stay fluent, stay open. And frankly, you might just love this. You know, I've grown to love it. I want to give you a peek at something. Then I'm going to switch to talking about the homework. It's not the one that I wanted. So your tour guide does a lot of things. This is the website I made for schools that are interested in me working for them. But I've got some stuff under the creating link. This is animation that I made, but what I really want to show you is some stuff done in Illustrator. And I may have given you a peek at this. Did I show you this already? Can anyone turn on their mic and let me know? Did I? No. Okay.
No.
Just giving you a peek. So you could tell this is a mix of photography and Illustrator, right? But honestly, I was born in Brooklyn, so I don't really know rhinos well enough. So I had many photos of rhinos. And I even had photos of hands handling cigarettes for this particular project. This is from a project I work on occasionally called Girafferous. Strange situations for a universe made of just giraffes and rhinos. This is a mostly Illustrator work. This one's got a lot of Photoshop. Back to Illustrator. You can see there's a real kind of variety of styles and techniques coming out of Illustrator. Again, very often teaming up with Photoshop. There's other stuff here. But just for the record, you know, I do a lot of this type of thing, which is physical, completely physical media, and lots of water and lots of mess. So you don't have to be stuck just because you've, you know, learned a particular tool set. I move back and forth. This is wood and oil paint. So, all right, enough of me. Let's get back to you. All right, I'm bumping one subject to next week, which is more about groups. We actually tried, we got a taste of groups the first day when we made a building with all those windows. I made you group it so it was easy to copy the building. And some of you may have embraced it already, so it's easy. So it's easy enough for me to bump it to the next set of exercises. I really wanted to focus on two things today because they're two of my favorite parts of the program, as maybe you could tell in my artwork. Lots of pen tool and lots of gradient. And again, remember, all this is going to be on YouTube. Hopefully by tonight, I have a class right after this, so I'm not going to be able to stick around much. I just want to talk to you a little bit about the current project, what our timeline is, and what you need by next week. So first thing I want to say is, usually in my class, you get 1 week for just thinking. And I mean sketching thinking, all right? That's the way we think. And I got a peek at least 1 or 2 people's sketches who just sent them early, and I had the time, I looked at them, and they were fun to look at. Really like the way some of you guys draw. It's interesting to see how that style translates and changes with the tool, with Illustrator in this case. But next week you're bringing in, you can interrupt me, by the way. Does somebody have a
Were we
question?
supposed to put the sketches somewhere?
No.
Oh, okay.
The one thing I really want to be extra clear, there's a homework box at the end of every handout. There will be 15 handouts. If you ever have a doubt, read the box. If it doesn't say to hand it in, then you don't hand it in. But it means that you do it, because I might ask right now, change my mind, right, based on what happens as a group, right? Also, if you're really unsure, really, really unsure, you get to send it to me in an email. And I get to talk to you about it that way as an individual. But never skip the sketch week. It isn't a week off by any stretch. It's going to be a lot of effort to make the first draft. Next week, you are going to hand it in, right? And I got to check my own handout, make sure that it's clear about that. And we're going to look at it. So you might remember last round, we did a very short look, 2 or 3 minutes per person after the first digital draft, the Illustrator draft. Right? And then the next week it was due. So give me 1 second, I'm sorry. One minute, Sean. Is that you, Sean? Howdy, howdy, right in. Hey, listen, man, I'll catch up with you in about 15 minutes. You know your way around. Yes. All the rooms are available. Okay, no problem. Making friends with Andromeda. What happened? We're so used to it. I bet you didn't even notice. Oh, I get another mask, whatever. All right. Homework. Let me get a look at the handout so I make sure I don't skip anything. All right. So, the box at the end is what you want to look at. And it looks like here, I didn't ask you to hand it in, but you're going to need to. So we'll just do it at the beginning of class next week, right? So don't worry about it. Just be sure you have it ready. I am going to collect them next week, right? Don't be fooled.
The sketches, or is it in Illustrator?
What's that?
Is
the
this?
digital one.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, just the digital one. So by next week, you'll know what worked and what didn't work, you know, and you know, you could ask me questions. I'm going to talk about the work mostly from an artistic perspective, right? So let's just go over a couple quick things together in the few minutes that we have. I included a link to the same samples as last time, but I'm going to use them for a minute. You know, one thing that really changed first year of art school, at least it did for me, and I remember it so clearly, was I went from drawing whatever I wanted, really just thinking freely and figuring out how to make it, I really wasn't used to the level of concept that the art world demands that starts right away in art school. Like these ideas. I never was going to draw an instructional manual, right? So right now, that's what we're talking about, a set of steps. Basically, you're using drawings without text to teach someone how to do something. I've got this big IKEA bed upstairs. It took me all day once to read their instructions. They were all visual, drawn in Illustrator, right? I had to take it apart. I have to put it back together tomorrow. I wonder if I could reverse engineer the manual. Anyway, let's take a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps for one excellent method of making grilled cheese. You just can't miss what this artist intended, right? They were very concerned that we got it in the right order. So they even drew a kind of path for us, even though I think I would have gotten it because we read from left to right in the West, right? All the ingredients were laid out. I didn't have to guess. Some slicing went on right away, laying it out on the bread. Then it moves to the whole thing is fried. I bet they flipped it, but they didn't include that step. And then there's the finished step, the finished product. So again, you have between 6 and 8 steps, and I really want you to limit yourself to 6 to 8 steps, no less than 6. And I'd really rather you not go over 8 because I want them to be beautiful. This is how to make a gin and tonic. There's a lot I like about this. There's some funky stuff that if we were going to publish it, I'd ask them to change. Like how could the bottom of that bottle be a straight line, right? The glass is a curve, and that clearly the artist knows that, but the flat end of the bottle is kind of weird looking. But I do like the change of scale that just kept the page interesting. They didn't put frames like this artist did. They wanted the page to breathe. And so they did it in a very different way, but it's kind of beautifully rendered ice cubes, very difficult to do, ice cubes, right? But you're simply making a gin and tonic. Beautiful. I'm really more after stuff like this because it's using closed shapes. There looks like a lot of pen tool going on here. No, you're not limited to the pen tool. You can use anything we've learned in anything that you handle yourself. But I do want you to learn how to use closed shapes, how to get those clean. There's no gradients in this one, but it's just gorgeous. And it's very clear what it means. You know, milk, flour, mixing, etc. Here's another one without frames. What I like about this one is the brave style of it, you know. I mean, this is weird, all these very angular lights and shadows. They're just lying on top of, there was some shape for the pot, and then they laid little triangular shapes almost to make light and shadow out of it. It's kind of a clever way to do it. Again, this person chose to work with lots of small shapes rather than blends. Now this person, I let them use a little bit of text because it was just so good and the point was so well made. And the artist had a vision of how the text would make an even better design. The very simple, bold font, the amount of air. You know, it is incredibly elegant. And this really looks like it would come in a package. Really ultra professional. By the way, I'm not complaining about the flat bottom because the artist was consistent. It's a stylistic decision, but it's consistent, so it works. This is much more complex. And I'll confess, I had to look at it a few times to understand it. But they're talking about splicing one type of plant on another and what the main steps are. So I know we went over these last time. This is also one of my favorites I've ever gotten. Incredibly elegant, very simple, really makes its point. Didn't have to say French press coffee, but since the artist actually did it so well, made their point, they just wanted the headline to advance the way it was visually. I was like, oh, they're not depending on telling me. They're showing me. So then it's okay. I want to go over some specs with you real fast so that you have a couple minutes to ask me questions. So just let me find my way back to the handout. So nobody in here do grilled cheese, even though that one person did. They must have given me the idea. Or feed a cat. You have to come up with something of your own. What's important here really right now is just the dimensions. Today, the first assignment, we did a 14-inch wide by 8.5-inch tall. So that's called legal size, right? But it's on its side. right? Because I want room for you to be able to spread out according to their 6 to 8 steps. You've got some room for it. Again, we're using a 1/2 inch margin, and you'll notice in the samples, remember the samples are here. The 1/2 inch margin was honored by all the samples that we looked at. Down here is the name that I'm asking for. And that's kind of that. Next week, by the way, I'm just going to have you drop it into the same Google Drive we've been using. But since I didn't put it on today's handout, I'll put it on. I'll ask you to do it at the beginning next week. Any questions for me? You know, come on, somebody. Ask me something. No? All right. You guys are just smart. What can I say? Smart and talented too. But also smart is asking questions when you have them. All right, I guess you don't. So folks, listen, I do check my email, but I have a real lot of students this semester. So it's a lot of email. So sometimes you don't hear back from me in the amount of time you'd like. And I do apologize for that. I really do my best. If you send me attachments, I do look and I do respond as soon as I can. So listen, folks, if there's no questions, I want to mention one more time, take a mental record. You need to be on time next class, partially because it's the only right thing to do for someone who wants to succeed. And the other part is your teacher's having Zoom problems. And those of you who are locked out because of the Zoom problems, I didn't do that to torture you, but fate came along and tried to make the lessons sink in even deeper. We really need to be on time. All right, guys, listen, you did an excellent job. I hope you're enjoying what you're learning, and I will see you all next week. See you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good day.
Very, very welcome. How you doing there, Alik? I see you're still there. You okay?
Oh yeah, sorry about that. I'm exiting now.
Oh, no worries. I'm just asking. All right. I'll see
Yeah,
you next
oh,
week.
I sent you an email about my camera that I've been having problems with it since the beginning of this week. I'm gonna try and get it under control.
Well, listen, Alik, as long as you remind me, I won't torture you about it. It's not your fault, you know?
Yeah,
So
no
like,
problem.
you know, don't worry about it, but it
Yeah,
is
got
better
it.
to have like a little face-to-face, you know? So if you could fix it, that'd be great.
Yeah.
All right?
All right.
Good luck
See you
with it.
later.
See you later.
Thanks.
You're welcome.